And we're live.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Shane at Read the Wonder and
Other side. Maria from Lady Knight of Avalon. Yeah, the
Maria from
left-right thing takes some getting used to.
um, Welcome. Glad you are here. So the topic, as I think you can see, if I posted it correctly, is what did we call it? Spirituality and
Spirituality
culture.
and culture.
Yeah. So we're just going to talk about like how our culture and our upbringing affected our spiritual belief system. And then, of course, we'll move into tarot because we love the tarot. And we'll talk about how the tarot has influenced that and, like, maybe what kind of mindsets needed to be changed in order to work with the tarot. So, we're good. Maria, I live in Michigan in the United States. For anybody that does not know, I grew up in Michigan in the United States. I've traveled, but this is really what I know, where I was raised, and the culture that I grew up in. And to be honest, me and Maria have not talked live ever before. We've barely even chatted back and forth. Like, we set this up and we've texted a couple times back and forth. But other than that, we know next to nothing about each other. So it makes this more interesting for both of us. So,
Yeah.
so Maria, why don't you tell me and everybody else where you live, where you grew up, all that good stuff.
Okay, so I was born in 1981 in East Germany. So I'm East German. That is what is still my heritage, my culture, even though East Germany ended in 1989. But like having that in the first years of my life, it influenced me a lot. And I still live in the eastern part of Germany. And yeah, so stuck.
You were raised in Germany.
Yeah. So okay, in East Germany, like spirituality was not really a thing because East Germany was a socialist regime. And so that meant political system over everything else. Even people that were in church, they were like second-class citizens. And that meant if you went to church and you did like the whole like going to Sunday service, identifying as Catholic, Protestant, whatever, it meant that you could go, like you could graduate after 10th grade in high school, and then you could go into certain jobs. And only the people who were part of the political system, they could like have the higher up graduation and go to universities and have the better jobs in society. So even that kind of created a two-class system. And the political system didn't really want religion to be a part of everyday life because they would teach something contrary to what the politicians would say. And so everything beyond that, like horoscopes or card readings, anything that we would call spiritual, didn't really happen. It wasn't talked about. It didn't exist. The people who did read cards or who knew about zodiac signs, that was talked about in private. And no one really ever said anything in public about that. So that's kind of where I come from. And after the wall fell in 89, when the two Germanys were united, the 90s were all about like trying to find how we're going to do this now. In East Germany, the socialist system had its pros and cons. The good thing was everyone got a job. Like unemployment wasn't really a thing. If there were people, jobs were created. And so when the wall fell, a lot of companies, factories closed down. People were out of jobs. And so a lot of people left East Germany. And so the 90s were all about rebuilding, trying to figure out who we are, what are we going to do, how do we do this? So even then, spirituality still did not play a big role in everyday life. It was there, we saw it in movies, and we read the horoscopes in the newspapers and the magazines, but people still didn't really incorporate it too much into their everyday lives. A few people would, but yeah, the majority of people had other things to worry about. So that's kind of where I come from.
That's really, I mean, like mine is my upbringing, my culture is entirely different. Like you actually had some stuff happen. And over here it was just like same old, same old. Um, did you have two parents growing up?
No, my mom got divorced before I was 2 years old, and I never really met him. And so I grew up with just my mom and my grandma. She kind of stepped in as the second parent. So I was pretty much raised by two really strong women.
Nice. No siblings?
I do have half sisters. I know one of them, but my mom only had me.
Okay. Neat. So when growing up, did your mom and grandma have any religious, spiritual beliefs that they tried to pass on to you?
Yeah, the funny thing is, my grandma, she was very spiritual. She passed away in 2001. But yeah, since it wasn't really talked about back then, as a kid, I didn't know about it. But she had dreams that would tell her what was going to happen. Like in those nights between Christmas and January 6th, each night symbolizes 1 month in the upcoming year. And so she would always have those dreams where she knew, okay, in that month, something's going to happen at work. Or, for example, when my mom was pregnant with me in East Germany, we didn't have ultrasound, so you didn't know what you would get until the baby was born. And so when my mom was pregnant with me, and in the night for July, my grandma dreamt that she was on a playground and there was only one little girl. She was wearing some pink stuff and she had long dark hair. So my grandma knew that I would be a girl. And the same thing when my aunt was pregnant. My grandma had a dream that a blonde boy would carry the groceries home for her, and my cousin was born blonde. So yeah, that's kind of what she could do. And for her, it started when she was around 18 or 20. That's when she had her first vision of her dead mom telling her where to go and where to start her life. And from there, it kind of happened. But yeah, so in East Germany, she didn't really talk about it. My mom, her husband, my uncle, they knew about it, but that was it. And my grandma,
Okay.
she always knew how many people in her circle would die each year. She didn't know who, but she always knew how many funerals there would be.
God, that'd be
And
awful to find out.
yeah, she every year she said one of them is going to be me. She said that every
Oh,
year.
that's, that's not nice.
Yeah, yeah, she had a certain sense of
You'd be
humor about
terrified
it.
all year long.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so my grandma, she was actually gifted that way. And my mom, she never explored spirituality since she was born into East Germany in the late 50s. And so, yeah, that wasn't really a thing for her. And yeah, when I started exploring that, I was around 11, 12, because then we had those teen magazines that started talking about, like, especially in the 90s, everything was about, Satanism, satanic panic, and the whole thing. Like, I even have some of those still that would teach us anything. Like, even in East Germany, we didn't have any books. You couldn't find anything on these topics. So, like, after the wall came down, we had, like, these magazines where they would, like, teach about the dangers of all of that, and of course have people like, yeah, I was worshiping Satan and we slaughtered a goat and all that kind of stuff. So that was like very much the 90s. And so of course my grandma was scared that I would end up like that. And when she watched me not turn into that and still be the same me, she kind of lost her fear of that, and then she started talking more about it. And that's when I found out what she actually knows, what she can do. And yeah, she was very much like a garden and a kitchen witch and all that without even labeling it that. She was just
Hmm.
doing it, and she was very intuitive about that. And yeah, because she raised us completely without church. That was not a thing in our household because when she was 12, her father had died. Her mom died when she was 5. And so when she was 12, she went to church. She was Protestant. And she asked the guy at the church, "Why did God take away my parents?" And this guy had nothing better to say to a 12-year-old grieving girl. um, God punishes those the hardest who he loves the most. So because God
Yeah,
loved her so much, her parents had to die. And that was it for my grandma. Like she just stayed 2 more years until she had like communion or whatever that's called. And then she left the church and she made sure that church was not talked about, practiced, or anything in our household. And that gave me the freedom to really look around and find what resonates for me and really grow into that. And so on my 13th birthday, I announced to my family, listen, this is my path. This is what I'm going to devote my time to, and this is what I'm going to study. I'm a witch.
very nice. So that was and how old were you when you made that decision?
Well, I started looking into that stuff around like 11, 12, and on my 13th birthday, I said, this is it.
Oh, my cousin is here. Hi, Autumn.
Hello, everyone.
I've never seen her on any of my videos. So what is it like now today in Germany? Are they still like not super religious? It doesn't play a large part in politics.
Yeah, religion is not really a thing. There are people who go to church, but it's a very private thing. People don't really talk too much about it. It doesn't play a role in politics at all. Like when I was in America for a year, I really saw that like that
Oh yeah.
was a very different culture for me, and like people going to church every Sunday and like including God in a lot of things that people say, and people identifying as Christians. That is not really something that you would hear over here a lot of times. Like since we had the Reformation, like in the past 500 years, it kind of slowly went back a little bit. And especially like in the last 100 years after the wars and everything, and the different political regimes, people had other things to worry about, and church kind of took the back seat, and it never really got back.
Okay. Um, I love you, Autumn. Autumn is um, she's very devout in her religious belief of God and Jesus. So she likes to spread that, but she's not trolling, I promise. She's a very nice young lady. So it might look like she's trolling. I promise she's not. All right. So Autumn, mind your manners because there are people here that do not believe what you believe, and that is to be respected in this atmosphere. People will respect your beliefs too, but you got to respect others. Done. So that is that. Like I didn't know that Germany or anywhere over. I just figured that in Europe, religion does play an important role. I'm very into like the Tudor history, like medieval history, not so much Germany, but that sort of history where religion played a huge role
Mm-hmm.
in their political system. So I just, silly me, assumed that was the case everywhere, even today over in Europe. So now I know very differently because you're right. America is much different in that regard. And anybody that lives in America knows that. Like religion, Christianity in particular, plays a humongous role, unfortunately, in our government and in decisions that we have, the whole separation of church and state, but we don't have that at all. People will claim that we do, but politicians and leaders make decisions all the time based on their religious beliefs, and that is, I can't stomach it. Like I'm a huge proponent of no matter what your belief, laws should be based on what is best for everybody to incorporate all belief systems.
Yes.
And the Christians that I know and appreciate will say the same thing. But unfortunately, a lot of religious people vote according to their religious beliefs. And I will never vote according to my own personal beliefs. I will vote. I always do my voting based on what I think is going to be the best for everybody's belief systems. It sounds like that's kind of what, not per se what Germany does, but they don't base their decision making in religion. Am I correct?
No, not at all. Like the political party that is in power are called the Christian Democrats, but religion doesn't play a role in that. It's just like like way back in the days when they started, they were more about Christian values, but they kind of realized quickly that if they want to go anywhere, that whole religious thing can't be the driving force, and so nowadays it doesn't really play a role anymore.
But they're still called the Christian Democrats?
Yep.
Why don't they change that to just Democrats?
I don't know. I mean, some people still
Just
identify
tradition.
with that, and we also have like a social democratic party. So those were like the old socialists from way back when. So it's kind of a weird thing. Like we have so many political parties. That's also a difference to America. Like you have Democrats and Republicans and maybe liberals, and we have, I don't even know how many parties we have. Every year someone's starting a new party because they want to do things differently, and it's just so many. Like when you get the voting ballot, it's like pages long, like so many names where you can make your cross, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is a little bit off topic, but that's all right. We're kind of moving in that direction, so we'll go there for a minute. Do you feel like how was I going to word that? We'll skip that for now because that is way off topic, and I don't want to do that. Like that would take us in a whole different direction. My bad. So we'll skip that. Hi B. Hi Tiny Trinkets and Tarot came in.
Hi everyone.
Miss Charlotte. And we are encouraging everybody to ask any questions that you want to make any comments. Like this can be a conversation between all of us. That's what makes good conversation, is different ideas. So, okay, so we've talked about your upbringing and the fact that you really didn't have any kind of religion in your household. So I'll tell you a little bit about mine. I've made videos on it, so I think a lot of people know. But if you don't, my dad was a pastor. I was brought up very religious. Not so much in my mom's household. I was moved around a lot. But my dad was super, super strict. Like, we didn't have a television. He didn't really believe in gifts at Christmas time. I couldn't watch Aladdin because it had a magical genie in it. Like that sort of strict Christianity. So that was fun.
Wow.
And then in my teenage years, for a few years, I lived with my grandma, and she was a very devout Christian. Sent me to a Lutheran middle school. So I didn't really get into the world until I was 15. I went to foster care, ended up going to a secular school, and then was introduced to different ideas. But up until 15, I didn't really have any other ideas or any experience besides anything but a very conservative type of Christianity. My grandma loosened that up a bit. I mean, she was more, we had a TV, we listened to Christian music. And I was going to school, whereas I had been homeschooled up until 6th grade. So when I started at 12 years old living with my grandma, there was a broadening a little bit, but I didn't have a lot of, I'm burping a lot and I'm sorry. It's gross. but I didn't have a lot of worldly experience until 15. And then we've already talked about how our entire political climate and culture is really, I mean, not entirely. If you live in larger cities, I think in the US, there is much more open mindedness, more inclusivity, um,
Hmm.
those sort of things. But I grew up in little old Midland, Michigan. And if you live in a smaller city in the United States, you'll know what the feeling is like. Mostly it's very conservative, very Republican. Um, so yeah, our upbringings have been entirely different, both in family life and in culture, politically. Um, so that is so interesting. Does anybody have any questions for me or Maria based on just like our upbringings before we move on to more of our adult life and beliefs? Hi, why? Okay, well, if there's questions coming in, we'll address them. But so, so you were 13 when you decided you were going to be a witch. Do you still identify as a witch?
Yes,
Okay, and that's
that's
never
what I will
changed.
always be. No, that hasn't changed. That
Okay,
is who I am. That's what I believe.
okay. Do you want to? Do you feel comfortable telling us more what witchery entails for you? What does that mean for you? What do you believe? How do you practice?
For me, I try to incorporate the moon phases and a little bit of astrology. Like, if I want to do a ritual, then I would look at the moon calendar, what moon phase we have, and like when is the next full moon or new moon. And depending on what I want to do, I would pick out the specific moon phase. I would also see, okay, in what sign is the moon at that time, and how could I best word my intention? Like, if the moon was in Aries, I would say something very different as opposed to if the moon was in Cancer, for example. And so that's how I like prepare my spells. I do spell work. I do some very basic stuff, like not too fancy. Like I have one wooden box with all the things that I could use, like dragon's blood and like a lot of incense that you can burn. But the majority of my spells are very simple. Like I just write down my intention, my spell on a piece of paper. I read it out loud to the moon, for example, and then I just burn it and send it off into the universe. So very basic things. And for me, being a witch, I live by the harm none rule. So I will do whatever I feel resonates with me. But of course, I don't want to intrude into anyone's life. I don't tell anyone what to do, what to believe. I keep my spiritual life, like in the real world, very private. Because like if anyone has questions about it, I can talk about it, but I don't really tell people what I believe in or what I do. And yeah, so I try to just yeah live a life where I don't really like yeah I don't intrude into anyone's energy, or I don't tell them what to do, how to do things. I just mind my own business pretty much, and that's also how I do my witchcraft. I'm a solitary witch for the most part, but I do have other people that I practice with now. And so, yeah, for the most part, solitary witch. That's what I am.
Nice. How does your how do your family members and friends feel about um you being a witch?
My mom, she always said, "Oh, I have a mom as a witch and I have a daughter as a witch, but I'm not a witch." Mm.
Is she jealous?
And yeah, and but she's kind of grown into it. Like she's also like a garden witch, and she's very good with animals. Like that is her thing. And so she does have her own talents. It just came much later in life that she discovered that. And she has asked me for spells, so I gave her some spells to do My uncle and my mom, they both come to me for tarot readings. My grandma came to me for a tarot reading where I actually predicted her death. Yeah, so my family is very cool with that. And in my friend circle, only the very, very close friends, like best friends, they know what I do, and they would also come for readings. And yeah, so I never had anyone in that sense tell me that it was a problem. Like the only bad experience I ever had was in college, where I met this guy and we were hanging out for a few days, and then I decided to tell him what I believe in. And at first, everything was cool, and as soon as I said it, he started questioning my intelligence.
Ugh.
He said, "How could a person like you believe in something like that?" He called himself an atheist, but he was making wishes like with an eyelash that fell out and wishing at shooting stars. So
We do that over here,
that
yeah.
kind of atheist. But yeah, that was a really bad experience. Like he was insulting me left and right and questioning my mental capacities because I chose to believe in something that he couldn't understand. And that's when I decided, okay, if I ever going to tell anyone again, then I need to know them a lot longer than just a few days. And so, like the YouTube community, I'm very open about my spirituality, but the people in real life, they don't know that I have this channel and they don't watch it. And so I keep those two worlds separate from one another.
There are big benefits to doing that, and I know there are. I, however, am
Yeah.
like the exact opposite. I tell people as soon as I can. That way I know if they're not down with it, they're rooted out of my life immediately. I don't want to get close to anybody or anything and then months in tell them, by the way, I read tarot, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about it, and they're like, ew. Bye. Then I just wasted time. So I like getting it out there and then letting people do what they're going to do. Helps root out the bad apples for me anyway. How does your society, your culture, how does your, I don't even know, what city do you live in?
I live in Leipzig. That is in Saxony. It's in when you visualize Germany, it's like kind of in the middle to the east. And
Okay.
Germany, like when it comes to the size, like square footage, is about the same size as New Mexico, I think.
Okay. Thank you for the
So it's not
comparison.
that big.
Because I really didn't know how big Germany was. You're right, that's not.
No, I think like the United States and all of Europe, that would kind of be like the same square footage, but
Okay.
like each individual country is not that big.
Okay. So how does your society overall react to like witchcraft, tarot, the occult, anything of that nature?
Yeah, that's why people keep that a secret a lot. Like very, very few people advertise. Like every once in a while you would see the people who would have like a pentagram wearing like that around their neck, or they dress in black, and so it's kind of obvious that they live a different life. But for the most part, you would never really hear people talk about it. Like something that I tried at a Christmas party with my colleagues was to like get astrology into the conversation, and everyone is open. And everyone was talking about their signs and what they think that means and all of that, very interested. And so before this whole thing that we had now in the world happened, I was actually planning to, like for the next Christmas party, maybe take a tarot deck with me and just see how they react and just kind of try that in like a casual setting. But that never happened. So yeah, we'll see when we can do that again. And then I would try to take something like the Monopoly tarot that is like very like no pictures on there and it's not woo-woo or anything, so that people aren't scared, and I can show them that this is just like, yeah, you can use that for advice. You can completely disregard it. It's not like spelling out your life for you. It's not set in stone. So kind of showing them that it's nothing to be afraid of. But yeah, that hasn't happened yet, so we'll see. But
That's
for the
funny.
most part,
You reminded me. Just a couple weeks ago, I read for Autumn, who is in the room. She's my cousin, and her boyfriend. They were over, and it took me a while to convince them because they're both Christians, and tarot has this bad rap where people equate it to witchcraft, which in your case is not a bad thing, but people think the worst. Witches are they worship the devil. They cast spells to hurt people. This is what people, Christians, a lot
Yeah.
of time think. They don't know any better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I finally convinced them to let me read, and I thought that the Morgan Greer would be an all right kind of safe deck to use. It's nothing. It doesn't look bad. It's light. So I did the Celtic, and one of the cards I flipped was the Devil. And if you know the Morgan Greer, the Devil in that deck is an upside down pentagram with like this ram's head. There's a fly. It doesn't. It looks pretty like ooh,
Yeah.
And there was just a whole mood shift when I flipped that card. They looked at it and what is that? And I did end up doing the reading. They were really turned off. The energy wasn't right. So good idea to bring that Monopoly deck because
Yeah.
you forget about those cards in decks, I think, that are going to really impact people that don't impact you at all because you know what the meaning is. You know what is behind that card, but other people see a devil
Yeah.
with, symbols of that and they just freak out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw a
So
question in
interesting.
the chat. I predicted her death. Yeah. And I did that with my Sailor Moon Tarot of all decks because that was the very first one that I had. And so my grandma wanted to get a reading from me. And the final card was the death card. And everything was talking about her health. So that was telling her, like, you need to do some changes. You need to change your diet. You need to pay a little bit more attention. Otherwise, it will lead to death. So that was the one time that I actually had like a physical death in my tarot deck. And with that same deck, with the Sailor Moon deck, I also predicted another death. It was my mom's boss. He committed suicide. And what I saw in the cards was that he would make a final decision. Those were my words. And I didn't know that it would be that final. But yeah, so those were the two times that I predicted deaths. But it hasn't stopped me from reading tarot.
Where do you think these answers come from? It's such a broad question, but when the tarot predicts this and it's giving you these answers, what is doing that?
For me, I believe that our consciousness can tap into, and I think there's so many different names for that. Some people call it God, some people call it source energy, some people call it angels or spirit guides. I think whatever we label it or what name we give it, I think it's pretty much all the same. Like everything is energy. For example, my uncle, his spirituality is more like quantum physics. And when he and I talk about spirituality, he will talk about it in quantum physics terms, and I will talk about it in witchy terms. And at the end, we will always come out at the same end result and realize that we're talking about the same thing. And so for me personally, I ask spirit guides to tell me what's going on. I try to call in past relatives that have passed on. I have Gabriel that I work with. So yeah, I think I don't really know if we will ever really know what that energy is. I think that is very much where the belief system comes in for me, because yeah, it's believing, otherwise it would be knowing. And so I think for me, it's whatever I feel comfortable working with and what I associate that with. But I don't know if it's really that. So yeah.
And you're still, even though you're not positive, you still have enough faith that it's going to read correctly.
It's a gut feeling. It's
Okay.
it just comes to me, and it's, if I don't say it, I will keep having that thought until I say it. So it needs to come out. It's something, yeah, I feel it and it will create images in my head. I don't hear any voices or anything. I'm not clairaudient. I don't have any visions per se, but every feeling that I get will create something like a little movie in my head or something, so that it will translate into pictures so that I can kind of understand what's going on. And it will just, yeah, it will be an intuitive feeling, and it will just be there like that.
I'm envious, I'm not going to lie. Because I don't talk about this a lot. I don't know if I've ever really talked about it very much at all in any of my videos. I struggle with knowing. I don't have a definite belief system about anything, really. The only belief system I have is I don't know. I don't know. So when I read the tarot, like, it's always been a struggle, because when I picked up the tarot, I knew that I had a connection with it. I knew I wanted to use it, but I've constantly struggled and warred with, God wouldn't like this, like, because that is how I was brought up. So that's always in the back of my mind. And even though I moved into a more open-minded frame, I have this problem that if I don't know exactly what it is that is giving me the advice in this cards or the predictions, then I can't know for certain that it's real. And I know other people that they don't know for sure, but they can still trust it. And I'm very, very, very skeptical about everything in my life, that it really hinders my intuition. I know that it's there. I know I have intuition, but I can't control it. It sucks, because sometimes it can be really, really good, and other times I'm not feeling it at all. And it's not something I find easy to bring in, whenever I want to. So it can make reading the tarot for me difficult. I don't know.
Do you have different experiences with different decks? Like, you find one deck to be easier to read with like intuition than others? Because that's something that changed for me. Like in the beginning, when I had like my very first 78 card deck was the Witch's Tarot, that James Bond tarot, and it was a pip deck, and I couldn't really read with that without the book. And then, like, as soon as I found the Tarot Tube World in 2018, and then I got all of those new decks, I find that I read different with different decks, and I very much rely on the images more so than the traditional meanings that each card has. I mean, I take that into consideration, but I will go with what I see in the pictures first and foremost, and that will like kind of spark the feeling, the intuition, the thought that I have. Do you experience that?
So maybe I need to try it more that way, do some practicing that way, because I'm the opposite. When I do a spread, I immediately go with like the standard, what I know is the definition of that card, and then I will let the image kind of influence me. But I like your way better. It is definitely more intuitive. I can see it being very helpful. So that is something I should be trying. I need to do more just practicing readings. I need to do that. And you asked, and the Rider-Waite is always my go-to deck. It was the first deck I ever got, and maybe if the Wild Unknown had been the first deck I ever got, that would be the one I cling to, or any other deck. But it happened to be the Rider-Waite, so I feel I can always read with that, always. But I just got the Children of Litha. And that is, do you have the Children of Litha?
No, but I've seen your video.
Yeah, it is amazing.
And I totally agree with that. That was the one with the Pocahontas, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pocahontas and Raja. Yeah.
I see the tiger from, what was it, the Jungle Book?
Yeah.
Too,
yes. Yeah. Do you get that same vibe when I was going through it? A little bit of a Disney here and there?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful deck, and I want to get more connected to it, just because it's so gorgeous. I think it does read well so far, and it's still very Rider-Waite, and I will always be a Rider-Waite boy.
Yeah.
What's your favorite deck? Do you have a favorite?
I have many favorite decks, but one, like, since we're talking about culture, one that is like very German culture is the Röhrig Tarot. That one was created in the very early 90s by a painter. And that deck is like, yeah, it's not really easy to read with. So I would consider this my soul deck, but I don't read with it too often because, yeah, the cards are not that easy to manage. They're really big. But this
Yeah.
deck shows like German culture of like the 80s and 90s. Let me see. For example, here, very German, the Formula One racing car, or like hairstyles from the 90s that we had, stuff like that. Or he even had like down here in the corner, this is like German money, and he has also like the American dollar. So he has like, this is very West German, this deck. So it's not East German, but it's like the closest thing to a German, like very Hollywood influence. Like we have the Hollywood movies here, like very Hollywood style stuff. Also, yeah, Americanization was a part of
Queen
West German
Elizabeth?
culture. Hmm?
Was that Queen
What?
Elizabeth?
No, that was just.
Okay. I have a thing for Queen Elizabeth, and it looked like her.
This is, yeah, this is very much like the 90s fashion and what you could see in music videos and stuff like that. Or here even like the Star Wars kind of made its way into it with the Jedi sword. Like, yeah, this is and also there's a lot of like nudity in here. Like this is the deck that has countless, like, I don't know if you're comfortable with nudity here. Like this has so many boobs and stuff, and yeah, so some people may call this a bit sexist. I totally disagree, because in Germany, nudity is like the nudist culture is part of our culture. Like we have nudist beaches everywhere. Sexuality is not hidden like it is in America. Like that was a big culture shock for me when I came to America, like how much they actually hide it and how afraid they were of sexuality. And so yeah, this deck is like the representation of my country in the 80s and 90s. So this is like my childhood, my teenage years, everything, and that's why I consider this my soul deck, even though I don't read with it that much. But yeah, it's a representation of where I come from, and so that's why I love this very much. And otherwise, like my Sailor Moon Tarot is definitely one of my favorites because it was the very first one, and I got it when I was 18. And otherwise, yeah, I love reading with my Haunted House Tarot. That one is like my go-to deck when I read most of the time. But I'm also like, I have so many decks, and I try to like, I don't have a specific system where I say, okay, 1 month I'm going to read with this deck, next month I'm going to read with this deck. Like I have them all over, and whatever I feel drawn to, I will just grab and just do a practice reading, do something, ask some questions, or something that I like to ask my decks, like, tell me something about myself. Like, so I want the deck to kind of give me a reading on myself and see where I'm at. Do I resonate with that? Because I can then say if what I see in the cards is what's actually going on. And so that's how I practice my intuition as well, just reading myself.
Nice. Do you think that, do you feel like you have to be connected to a deck in order to read with it?
I think it helps. I think it makes it a lot easier because for me, the classic RWS, it was my third deck that I got. And for me, I never really liked reading with it because the version that I have, like all the faces and stuff, they're not really colored in. It's just so many little dots, and they're all red dots. Like everything is just red. And that is very distracting for me. And so that's why I never really connected with that deck. And that's why I'm so glad now that we have this like mainstream where you can buy all these different decks and you can find something that you absolutely resonate with. And for me, I like a very like comic book kind of style, and so decks like that I can resonate with the most. And so the Haunted House Tarot definitely falls into that category. And I find that I read better if I like the deck. Yeah. So
Yeah.
something like the Wild Unknown, I don't really see too much in it because the artwork is not my style. It's
Okay.
beautiful in and of itself, but it's not my style, so I wouldn't pick it up.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm right on par with you there. Yeah, in order for me to read from a deck, I have to feel somewhat inspired, somewhat close to it. I could probably read if forced to from any deck, but it's certainly not going to be as intuitive or as deep, or maybe even as accurate as it would be from what are DV decks?
Doreen Virtue, or as I call her, she who shall not be named. I do have some of her decks, and I still use them.
Oh,
Not all of them. I know, but I think they're like the children in the divorce. I mean, they are not at fault for what their mommy did. So,
they.
and
I'm
at the
being
end of
too
the day,
hard.
it's just paper with pictures on it.
Yeah, yeah, and I was being too harsh, puking, but it's not my kind of deck. I don't really like decks that are all love and light and fairies and goodness and like because that doesn't represent life. I like decks
Mm,
that actually represent the entirety of our lives, the good, the bad, the indifferent, the painful, the
yeah,
happy. And most Doreen Virtue decks that I've ever seen are just full of positivity, which is great for
yeah.
some people. It works in certain situations, but that
But you
along
know
with the
why?
why.
Because she was afraid of the tarot. Like she also comes from that Christian upbringing, and that's what she went
Hmm.
back to. And I saw this video where she talked about like when she got her first tarot deck, she took out the devil, the tower, the 10 of swords, 3 of swords, and all the cards that scared her, and she was reading with the rest. So how can you even call yourself a tarot reader? And that's what you
Yeah.
see in the decks that she creates. I don't have any of her tarot decks. I only got the Guardian Angels, but I waited until that one came out only with Radley Valentine's name on it and not with hers. And that is like my grandma is giving me a hug deck when I need like a pick me up or something. But like if you see her tarot decks, like the devil is always renamed with something else. The death card usually has a different name, and it's always turned into positive stuff. And yeah, I feel those decks don't really acknowledge like the ugly parts of life.
Hmm. Hmm. Tiny trinkets. Is there a way? This is my first time on StreamYard, guys, but can't I? I can do
Yeah,
that. Look at that's awesome. So I have her complete collection and still use them. It's how I came to the tarot and oracle, and I have learned to separate the art from the artist. All right, yeah,
yeah.
and I'm not saying, like I said, I was too brash. They do not work for me, but I can see how they work for other people. Um,
I think they
and
are good beginner decks.
yeah, yeah, and I just don't like. She like kind of she went back to Christianity, right, and doesn't do decks
Full on
anymore. Is that right?
Christianity. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's doing
So
videos like everything is the devil and don't even pick up a tarot deck and stuff.
does
Yeah.
she still collect royalties from decks that are sold? Did she forswear
She
all of her
says she
income?
doesn't, but who knows? I mean,
See, that's what I
allegedly
would have a
she
problem
completely cut ties and they kicked her out and everything, but I mean, who knows? I don't know
with.
what
Okay.
the legal stuff would be.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's all on her. But
Yeah.
that just because of my own upbringing and the hang-ups I have with that, I have a lot. There's just a loss of respect that she would do that, even though that is her complete right. And if that works for her and she is finding peace there,
Yeah.
then good for her.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
think she was ever really into tarot. Like she was the angel lady, I think that's what people got to know her as. And then I think she just kind of the tarot decks they don't really feel like hers. Like I think they're more like Radley Valentine's or whoever she worked with. And so I'm glad that he gets to re-release them with just his name on it, and that he can still do his job in that way of doing it, and that he's not connected to her anymore, and that he can still continue with that. Because
Right
I think
on.
he kind of got screwed over in that whole process.
Yeah. Who does the good tarot? That wasn't Doreen Virtue, was it?
No,
That
no.
was Colleen. Is it
Colette Byrne? No, Colette
Colette
Byrne
Baron
Reed? Is
Reed?
that?
Thank you. That might
Yeah,
have been her. Yeah.
maybe. Someone
She
correct us in the
reminds
chat.
me of Doreen Virtue, but I think she's still very much around. But she
Yeah,
does the
she
same.
does. I have some of her decks as well, but yeah, I like her decks. Some of them they're very whimsical, like for just like
Mhm.
a one card pull. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think my first ever Oracle was the Enchanted Map. And I did love that deck. I don't have it anymore, but I loved it and it worked.
My first two Oracle decks that I got were actually the Romance Angels and the Angel Answers by She Who Shall Not Be Named. Because when I
Nice.
found the tarot community, like everyone was reading with those decks, and of course, like the whole like, ooh, that deck looks pretty. I want to get that. And then as soon as I fell down that rabbit hole, yeah. And that's why I have like 130 decks altogether, tarot and oracle.
Oh my. I think the highest I ever got to was 50 something.
Hmm.
And now I'm down to below 10. I sold all of them. Yeah. I was gonna ask something. When did, and if you probably know because you've been around long enough, I haven't. Zach would probably for sure. Well, he's kind of young. When did tarot become a little bit more mainstream? Start branching out into other kinds of decks. Like, was that around the Wild Unknown time, or what did it happen before that?
I actually took a break from looking at tarot decks. Like I got some like very few decks in like between 2005 and 2008. I got like a handful of decks, like the new Mythic Tarot, um, stuff like that. And then I took a long break from like buying anything because what I found on Amazon was not really all that much. And the only thing I had my eye on was the Atlantis Tarot from Los Garabeo, and I just put that on my wish list. And then when I was ready to get it, it was sold out. And so that I was like, okay, well, whatever. I have my few decks that I can read with. And so, yeah, I hadn't discovered anything on YouTube at that time. And that was like YouTube was still in the beginning stages. So I don't really know when it became like a big thing. Like I found it in the summer of 2018. That's when I came back into like really looking at decks and experiencing everything that's out there and yeah, starting to buy.
So you've only been really at the tarot for a few years.
No, I've been like I started in summer of 1999
Okay.
and like until 2018 I worked with those 5 decks that I had and I would do readings for family and friends. But I wasn't really telling too many people about it, and so I was just kind of doing it a little bit here and there. But since I found the tarot community, I kind of established something of a almost daily practice.
Okay. Nice. Are there any tarot decks that you absolutely don't like?
Yeah, I think for me it's mostly the artwork. Like if the
Mhm.
artwork doesn't speak to me, then I'm not gonna bother. Like, yeah, I look mostly at like comic book kind of style or pretty pictures, like for what I consider pretty. And I do like collage decks. I have a few, like the Stretch Tarot, for example. I really like that. I mean, the Röhrig Tarot is very much a collage deck. And this one, the Golden Wheel Tarot, this also is
Yeah.
very much like this is my childhood kind of because in East Germany everything was very like Russian influenced and so Slavic images, Slavic traditions, culture that was very much bleeding into our everyday life as well. And so, yeah, that's why, like, this for me is like reminiscence, like from my childhood, and that's why I love this deck. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have picked it up, because otherwise I wouldn't have like a link to a Slavic culture. And yeah, the only thing that I miss from this deck is like an explanation of what the fairy tales in that deck actually are. I think the guidebook is really lacking in that sense, and I wish someone would publish a book with all the fairy tales, because then you can actually read with that deck. For example, like
The
they are
dark
very
one is like,
different. Just the devil card. There is a fairy tale about this guy and like his search for that flower, and if you know the story, then this makes sense as the devil card. Otherwise, I would be like, okay, why is this guy on fire? What's the deal with the flower? And so this is one of the decks where you actually have to know kind of what's behind it to really get the full experience of it. I mean, you can still read with it, but it would be better to know the stories. Same way with like the Lover's Path. Knowing all the stories in there gives me a completely different reading experience, and I see things in the cards that don't really too much correspond with the traditional meanings. This is also one of the decks where I would read what I see in the picture, and yeah, that to me is like my connection to opera. I mean, I work at an opera house, and a lot of these stories in here have been turned into operas, and so yeah. So that's kind of how I like the decks that I have. They have to have some connection to my life. Like I need to have some link to something. They need to remind me of something, or yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And like I don't like collage decks at all, but that's just me. So Tiny Trinket said, there's plenty of room for everyone's unique voice and energy out here. And that's true. Like we're all so different that it's going to take different art styles to resonate with different people. And that's the beautiful thing about the fact that tarot has opened up so widely. And I've seen it even since I joined, the tarot community years ago. I've seen it even become more and more broad. And that really makes it a lot more accessible to other people, to other cultures, to other belief systems. So that's really an amazing thing. And Zach said, I can bring that number back up, talking about my decks. He already has, because it was in his live that I saw Children of Litha.
Yeah, Zach and Y. Oh my God, yeah. Those unboxings. Yeah.
Like,
especially Y.
Yeah, I saw Children of Litha, and I just obsessed over it for days and days, and I finally was like, okay, and so I bought it, and I don't regret that purchase. I also bought the Star Seeker, and that I actually Y bought from me, and that worked out really well. I wanted that one, and it did not resonate with me. It's got a little bit of that collage feel, a little bit. It's got that 2D. It's very 2D. It didn't work for me, but it'll probably work for Y. Will either of you be participating in the Q&A videos that are currently going around the community to get to know more about one another?
Have I missed something?
Yeah, me too. I don't know what you're talking about. And I think Ange, you're saying Ange is your name? Good
Angela.
To know.
Yeah.
Glad to know. Angela. Ange. I did not know your name, so thank you. Tell us, because I don't know what you're talking about here with the Q&A videos.
Are they like? Yeah, I'm very behind on watching.
I won't lie. I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos anymore. Some people might think of that as selfish, like, and I often do myself. I feel like if I have a channel and I want subscribers and I want people to watch my videos, shouldn't I be doing the same? But no, not necessarily. Like, as a manager of a retail store, you don't constantly purchase items from your store, do you? Like, I feel like it's kind of the same thing. I used to watch a lot of videos, but now I am more involved with learning and creating videos, so I don't have the time to watch a lot of videos.
Yeah.
So yeah, are these Q&As, are they, huh?
I wanted to ask a question. Go ahead.
Are the Q&A videos, are they like Video responses, are they lives?
Probably responsive.
So there's like a list of
I don't
questions
know.
that you
Maybe it's a
just read off
hashtag.
there.
We'll find it.
Okay, here we go. So
Depends on who
Julie,
started them. Yeah.
Kimberly Rose, Amy, and Jason, and Allison have all put out a call for
Oh, I
questions.
think I know what I mean. Like, yeah, they tell people to ask questions and then they answer them. Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't know any of those names. That's how behind I am in this community. Like, since I came back a few weeks ago, I haven't done much diving into who's out there and what's being talked about. I've just been kind of focused on getting my shit up and running. But yeah,
And
these
that's
are names I
okay.
don't know, so I'll have to, yeah, and I'll have to look them up. And um, that's definitely interesting in a way to get to know. I would definitely be open to doing that. How do they do that? Do they have a video that says comment below with your questions and I'll address
Yes.
them in the next video?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they just keep that video, like that series going.
No, they like for the most part they give it like a certain time frame, maybe like a week, and then after a week they would take the questions and just answer them, something like that, or 2 weeks, whatever.
I will totally do that. Like, are you going to do that?
I could do that. I don't know. Yeah, it's something to think about. So what I wanted to
It's
ask, like
interesting.
you said that you've traveled a lot. So do you take decks with you when you travel? Have you done that? And how has like traveling to other countries influenced your spirituality?
Ooh, God. I mean, the only country I've really traveled to is India. I went to England for like a week, and I didn't really get down with their culture very much. It was fun, but it's very still. It was. Somebody explained it this way, and I totally agree. It's like American culture, but just a little step off. And that's exactly what, like, everything felt like it was just this little step off. So it was interesting, but um I've spent a total of 2 months in India, and yes, I took decks, and it was very interesting. I even took them to the beach with me. And in India, like, unless you're in a very, very large city, people, especially kids, will stare at you, they'll follow you around. You're a white person and they see one, maybe never. Like one of the villages I stayed in, some people had never seen a white person before in their lives. So when I went to the beach, I'm surrounded by all these, tweens. Hey, where you from? Blah 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 blah. And I pulled out my tarot cards, and they were just in awe. And I bit the bullet, and I let everybody choose a card. And I was like, oh God, my poor cards. They're going to be bent and squished. And some of them were, and that's all right. But they all pulled a card, and I just did a little mini reading for each one of them about what their card meant. And they loved it. They loved it because it's not, you would think almost that in that kind of culture where they seem to be more spiritual, where they have all of these different gods, that they'd be more open-minded to these practices, to tarot and such. They're not. Hindus really don't, they believe the same thing as Christians. The tarot shouldn't really be messed with. Divination is kind of a no-no. I got my cat on my lap. So it didn't, to be honest, it didn't really influence. It didn't make me think any differently than I did before going. It gave me new experiences. Like, I really believe in respecting other cultures, their beliefs, their gods, when you're in their culture. So, I even went into their little temples and knelt before some of their gods and prayed to that God. And whether or not I, believe that God really exists is a moot point to me. I want to give it homage. So I was able to do that, and I was really happy to be doing that. So I guess in that way, it didn't really broaden my beliefs, but it deepened them.
Mm-hmm.
that these things need to be honored and respected, both in different cultures, and then within our own culture as well. We need to respect other. The only thing I don't respect is intolerance. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's hard here in America because there's a lot of intolerance. So I end up looking like a judgmental prick when I'm just screaming the whole time. No, I'm really open-minded. I just don't like your intolerance. It's hard.
Yeah.
Hi, queer Hinny. Hinny. I'm new here and love your energy. Thank you. Hugs back. Tiny trinkets. I cheated and cherry picked questions from their comment selection and then asked my viewers to post their questions they may have for me. So you picked questions from their comments and then answered those in a video and then asked for more questions. I'm liking
Sounds
this.
like, yeah.
I like it. I like to be daring. I like to be daring. So I would put a blanket statement out that I would answer every single question that was asked in my comments. I wouldn't cherry pick or anything. I wouldn't say I don't want to answer this one, but I'll answer this one. I'm the kind of person that would be like, I'll tell you. Like, you might not like the answer. I might lose a few subscribers, but I'll let you know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the age-old question, like, what is authenticity and how authentic are we?
Yeah, it's that's something I have tried to address from the beginning, from like the very first video I did, and it's really, really, really difficult for the most part. Like, it is difficult to be super authentic online, but at the same time, in certain areas, I think that I and probably you and a lot of other people in the community are more authentic on their channels than they are in real life. Like, you
Probably,
as an example, you don't do a lot of tarot. You don't really show all that in your daily life. You kind of keep that very close to you, but you're allowed to do that on your channel. So that part of you is very authentic. And so I feel, I'm the same way. Like, I don't get a lot of time to, I mean, you saw Autumn here earlier. She's very open-minded and she'll talk to me about the tarot, but she don't like it. So I get to do that here with you guys and to talk about things and show decks. And so that part is more authentic. But I think there is a certain like wall you hit where you can, it just stops. Your authenticity can't go any further than that wall. What are your thoughts on authenticity and being a creator?
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, like, we present in the way that we want people to see us. And so, of course, myself, when I make a video or when I'm somewhere, of course, I try to present myself in the best possible light, of course. But I try, I mean, there are certain topics that I don't talk about. Like, something that I don't address would be like my love life, for example, or politics. Those are like the two things that I exclude. And everything else, I'm an open book.
It's fair enough. I think there are some things that you really have to keep to yourself unless you are very, very, very solid emotionally. Because I learned firsthand that you put too much online, and it's very easy to judge what you really can't see.
Yeah.
The small snippets we see of other people's lives and videos is just that. It is a very tip of the iceberg, and to judge anybody based on that is insanity. We'll never know what creators' lives are really like, what they're really going through. For that reason, you share too much and you really get shit on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I still and that's why I posted that video yesterday that I did a little bit about my past and the last 2 years, because I don't want to have let the past create that block in me. Like, I still want to be open without fear, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I know how to do that without giving away too much. Like I know what I believe about my addiction and what I've done to battle that, and I'm very firm in that belief and where I am with that. That nothing anybody could say on that video if they want. I haven't received any negativity at all, but if I
Mm-hmm.
had, I'm safe enough in myself right now that I know it wouldn't affect me. But there are
Yeah.
other things that I probably would not feel that I know that certain comments would affect me, and those things I just don't talk about.
Mm. I think some topics are actually good that people talk about them, and I mean, you can connect with other people who go through the same thing that might not have anyone to talk to about these things, and they see, okay, I'm not alone. And
Mhm.
in that sense, I think it is good that some people are brave enough to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is nice when people are fearless about some issues because you're right. Some things they are better talked about, and the only place that people are gonna be able to relate with others is online. Especially when we're talking about spirituality. I think a lot of us are much more open-minded and believe in such radical things that we can't talk about out, even with our friends, with our family, in the world, that this is really the only safe place that we can share about them. So I think it's very brave for any creator or anybody commenting to be able to put those kinds of things out there about themselves. It helps
Yeah.
others. Even if you get shit back in return, know that somewhere out there it has helped somebody and somebody can relate.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's especially good for the people who don't experience it to understand it, because we all may have someone in our circle that we know who may experience certain things. And like, if we don't hear from them, it's helpful to hear from someone else so that we can kind of figure out what it is that they're going through and that we can talk to them in a better way.
Yeah.
Like, in a lot of ways, you remind me so much of my bestie, and like some of the things that you talked about and what you experienced. And he has gone through some similar stuff. And so, yeah, I really see like a lot of synchronicities there, which is, yeah, well, I feel like I already know a lot about you in that sense because I can relate it back to him. And so, yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. You seem, yeah, I really loved doing this. And, it's awesome that there is a genuine connection of some sort here. Because you always go, especially never having talked to somebody before, you don't know what to expect. This could have been a
Mm.
15-minute interview if there was no connection, but like, okay, let's get out of here. It was great. So I think we'll kind of end it here. Does anybody have any questions for either of us before we take off? I need to eat and use the bathroom. What time is it over there?
It's 10:13 in the
At
evening.
night? Yeah.
I'm
What
6 hours
is
ahead
this
of
your
time.
bedtime?
My bedtime is usually around midnight. That's when I
Okay,
fall asleep.
nice. I'm very much a night owl. I I was staying awake until like 4 or 5 in the morning for a while, and I've cut down to like I go to sleep between midnight and 2 now. So
Mm,
that's better. That's I feel more productive. But I love the nighttime. I love the energy of the nighttime more than I do the day. So yeah.
mm.
Thanks, Allie. I'm super glad that you were here. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions. I myself will do a questionnaire video, possibly later tonight, but in the next couple days, I'll choose some questions off somebody else's and I'll answer a few, and then we'll leave that open for more questions. That'll be a fun time. Do you have any last thoughts or anything, Maria?
Mm, I really enjoyed this.
Mhm.
So this was fun. Thank you for
Yeah,
doing this with me.
yeah, no, thank you so much. We will definitely do this again, for sure, and we'll think of a different topic for next time.
That would be
All right.
great.
All right, we're going to say bye. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
Stay well.